My name is Ellen Angus, and today I am going to be delivering a workshop on artist statement writing. I'm going to do this through using a PowerPoint, which I have up on the screen. Yes, and I suppose just as a kind of introduction, is that I'm trying to bring a kind of more creative and exploratory approach to artist statement writing and to bring a bit of joy into it, as I feel it was something I have always struggled with as an artist, and felt pressure to maybe conform, for it to be a certain way, for it to have a certain use of language. And I think what an artist statement writing workshop can do is help you find your voice and bring it back to your work and bring it back to the materials and bring it back to the things that excite you, so that, yeah, this process should be a bit fun. There we go. So, just as a bit of an overview, I'll introduce you to myself, and we'll talk through a few of the slides. So we'll talk through, when I say we'll talk through, it's just me talking into the abyss. But yeah, please do sort of at any time stop, press pause, have a little think. You know, the ways in which you learn best. So make sure you take plenty of breaks. I'm hoping that this will be about 40 minutes long, maybe even slightly less. So let's see how fast I can get through the material. So talking about feeling comfortable or not comfortable, the first thing I wanted to look at is kind of like, why can artist statement writing feel uncomfortable? Then we will look at anchor points and the ways in which an artist statement can be exploratory, so a kind of more positive way of framing it. And then we're going to do a task where we look at our previous artist statements. So there'll be a few tasks throughout this workshop. And whenever there is a task, just press pause and give yourself as long as you need. And then we're going to look at what we want the artist statement to do. So what's its purpose for us? And then we're going to look at a few different obstacles that we might encounter when attempting to write an artist statement. And we'll have a few tasks to help us kind of push through those obstacles. And then we'll conclude with just a bit of a summary of the kind of useful take-home bits of information. We'll just arrive at the last slide, which is kind of looking at how hopefully we'll be making more art than we are making artist statements. So first of all, I just wanted to introduce you to my practice. I think that is important when delivering these workshops. I've started to think that's more and more important, because when I'm telling you to see yourselves as artists and to be confident when writing your statements. So I think it's also important for me to say, first and foremost, I'm an artist. There's lots of other things that I enjoy doing, and one of them is doing workshops. So this is some recent work that I did on a residency. I'm just going to skip through to some of the artist development that I've been doing and some of the places that I've been working at, and I do a bit of lecturing as well. So that's just kind of a bit of information on how I kind of make it work as an artist. There's lots of these different arms, which I'm sure all of you will be experiencing as well. The different bits that kind of fit together with your practice, or don't fit together at times. I would like us to think about what's difficult when making an artist statement. So to do this, I've been reflecting on the different iterations of artist statements that we may have. So what I'm asking you to do is to go on a little bit of a hunt for previous artist statements, and I'll make sure that that's in the email that you get as well. So you've got a bit of time prior to gather some of that material. So previous iterations of artist statements. And the reason why I'm asking you to do that is because I want you to reflect on what works with those artist statements, what doesn't work. Do you feel that when you write an artist statement that it feels kind of uncomfortable, you don't want to pin down your practice? Is it difficult because you yourself as a being are shifting, changing, evolving? You know, how can you possibly pin anything down? Or does it feel like you're truth saying and bearing all, and then does that feel uncomfortable? So just trying to get everybody to think about what they might personally find difficult when tasked with writing an artist statement. So I've just put down something that I kind of noticed when I was writing them, that I would start writing about a work or a kind of concept that I thought all of my work sat under. And then one of them, I'd think about another piece of work, and one of them would become sort of rebellious and, I wrote here, tyrannical, and sort of jump out of that overarching concept that I was trying to create or state about my own practice. So it was like, as soon as I thought I was finding one thing, suddenly everything had shifted over, or one thing had shifted over. So that was one of the things I was struggling with when writing an I statement. I think also sometimes it can be a case that you sit down to write and you start casting ahead to kind of like future versions of yourself or future versions of works that you'd like to make. And therefore, the past work that you've been doing doesn't quite fit into a new version that you want to be creating. So there's also maybe some difficulty with that as well. So what I'd like for you to do is have a bit of reflection yourself. So these are some of the questions I put up for myself, which was, how can you write an artist statement if you are changing, evolving, and shape-shifting all the time? So yeah, if you maybe press pause here and have a little look at your past artist statement. So this is the task that I'm wanting you to do at this point. So yeah, reflect and look at previous artist statements. What has worked? What has changed in your practice since the last artist statement you wrote? Is there a key theme, idea, or principle that holds your artwork together that you're seeing emerge from looking at all these different statements? So maybe just take 10 minutes and have a look through, and we'll meet back here in 10. Okay. Let's come back. I hope that's been fruitful in some way. It's always interesting, I think, going back through different artist statements and seeing the ways in which things have changed. For me, I had a look through some of the statements that I'd written and kind of preferred some of the ones I'd written in sort of 2017 or maybe even earlier, because they were a bit more unconventional. So yeah, here's just an example on the screen of a few of the ones that I've put together in the past. So 2020s, I'll just read because it's very quick. And that says, I am firmly on the side of the promiscuous one, the illegitimate one, the trickster, the jester, the magpie, and the crow. And that was just an opening sentence from that artist statement, but I really liked all of the imagery that it conjured up. And it felt a bit different from going, I am an artist who explores blah, 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 blah. Yeah, just thinking about what you like about those previous iterations and what stands out, and that kind of help us formulate what we do in the rest of this session. I've looked at Gilda Williams, who has a really great book. Some of it's a bit didactic, kind of a bit kind of, it feels that, so I read some of it and I feel a bit like she's ordering me around. So yes, Gilda Williams has written basically like a book that's basically like how to write about contemporary art, and it covers lots of different things. It covers artist statement writing, it covers writing about a piece of work, lots of different aspects of writing for your own contemporary art practice. So, what do you want the artist statement to do? I've pulled out a little bit of her text and looked at what I kind of agreed with. And I thought that reflecting on your art and your true interests. So you want the artist statement to reflect your art and your true interests believably back to you. So you look at the statement that you've written and it feels congruent. It feels, yeah, I read that and I feel comfortable. That is a true reflection of what I'm doing right now. Because it feels really sort of, I think you can tell if you start writing something and it feels a bit phony, or like you're trying to prove something to somebody else. I think you can tell that straight away. And they're always the pieces of writing that you then very quickly do not feel comfortable sitting with. So I think that's really important, that first point. And then, we want this piece of writing to assist in your thinking. We want this piece of writing to assist in your thinking as you continue making art. So this whole process is supposed to be helpful for you. There's no point in doing it if it isn't helpful for your practice, for the continuation of your practice. And also this could relate to visibility. So it could be that you want the artist statement to attract interest to your work from galleries or funding bodies or other artists, your peers. And this is a little mini task here, which is, do you have any extra points that you would add to this list? You may have some personal points or some points that you think are valuable for your peers to know concerning what you think an artist statement should do. So yeah, please take a moment to have a little think about that as well. And this is I wanted to just put this in here. This is a slide that I made sort of just at the end of this presentation, and it was something that I've been thinking about, because this whole process of writing applications, writing artist statements, writing funding bids takes up a huge amount of unpaid labor, a huge amount of time. Many people are doing their art practice on the side of doing a full-time job, of having caring responsibilities. We're living in a pretty diabolical economic situation in this country right now. So these are all things that I think are really important to kind of hold, in the sense that this process of writing the statement should, like I said before, should only work, or will only work, if it's helpful for you. Because all of these other things are going on. So there's no point in kind of like trying to do this, but it just not feeling good in any way. It needs to feel good, I think. Yes, it can be a challenge, but I think overall there needs to be something positive that you get from it. And I think overall for me, writing an artist statement gives me a moment to reflect and think deeply about the direction that my practices are going to, and it can really provide that moment of going, okay, I'm here now, actually I want to change course a bit, or actually I need to change course a bit, maybe I need to focus on some other things for a little while. So I'm hoping that it also does something more than just gives you a piece of writing by the end of this, but also gives you a kind of opportunity to sort of regroup and plot your course a little bit. So yeah, that could be like that you a kind of career advancement, or it could be that you just are thinking, right, I need to strategize how I get more studio time, or I'd like to change the materials that I'm using. And I also wanted to say here, bearing in mind all of those things that I've said about unpaid labor, that you do not need to do all of these tasks, that you should pick what appeals to you the most. And sometimes that working with a friend can be easier. So doing these tasks together, one of them, you do one, another person does another one. Yeah, that just felt important to say. And just riffing off that, if you want to fast track your artist statement writing, and I've looked at this in every single workshop that I've done so far, there is an amazing, bizarre piece of artwork by an artist called Jasper Ringgold, who has created an artist statement generator. Now, I'm not going to click onto it now because I don't have much time, but if I would really advise looking this up, because it's quite fun to do, and it bizarrely creates some quite brilliant artist statements. You basically get a choice between sort of like 3 different themes, so it does try to tailor it to you, but it also is just picking from this wealth of sort of like art language. But it's quite a fun task to do. So I would advise having a go at that. Also saves a lot of time. So now I wanted to move on to the obstacles that one might encounter when writing an artist statement, and we'll look at doing a few tasks that kind of go together with these obstacles. So one is that all artist statements sound alike. So before setting off on My Art Explores, take inventory of the countless other options instead of using My Art Explores that are available, or invent your own. Now, this sounds counterintuitive, but one of the tasks that we can do also to kind of look at how we can be a bit more, we'll look at the kind of tone that we are really like in and want to kind of create in our own artist statement. Sounds counterintuitive to them all sounding alike, but I think it is helpful. So what I have done is I've had a look at other artist statements, so artists generally that I really like, and I've kind of looked at what about their statements is interesting, what isn't that interesting, what sounds a bit like kind of art international English, which we'll come to on one of the other slides. What kind of tone do they have? What feels inventive or original? And this isn't to copy, because we want our artist statement to be unique to us. But I think it's also helpful in kind of figuring out what you really don't like in an artist statement, and what works. So I picked the artist Laura Provost, who I love. I think she's a brilliant artist, and I've just gone through and I've highlighted and read the things that I don't like, and then in bold I've pulled out the bits that I think are interesting. So the part where she talks about sensual environments laden with playful mistranslation. I really like that because I've seen her work, and I do think there's a sense of playfulness, and there's also a sense of language deliberately being sort of mistranslated or dropping out. Yeah, so there's something to do with the words within her practice that's very interesting. Almost like a deliberate kind of getting words slightly wrong so that then you as a viewer have to make new relationships between words. It kind of invites the viewer to be quite playful, I think. So that's an example of what I think works and what I think doesn't work. So your task, I'm going to skip this here. You can always come back to it. That's another example of a artist statement. Your task is then to do the same. If there's any artist statements that you think are particularly good, why is that? It's similar to the first task that we did in terms of looking at our own artist statement, but it's kind of like trying to mine for other ones that ring true, or perhaps the opposite. Perhaps really we think they really don't work. So that's the second task. And then we have the second obstacle on our journey to artist statement writing, and that is that they are indecipherable. So this is quite important, and we're going to look up International Art English. I think I said it the other way around. And it basically, I'm basically referring to the kind of language that's used within a lot of biennials or within the gallery context, which uses a lot of very long and difficult words, and often they're not used in the correct way. So remember things like ontology, epistemology, metaphysics, which you see kind of coming up again and again within these contexts. They carry specific meanings and use them sparingly and only if essential. The key thing is to bring your ideas round to the media that you've chosen, and don't worry about trying to sort of like over please a reader with big complicated words. And just to sort of emphasize this point a little further, we're going to have a look at International Art English. So this is an article. So this is your third task. We'll look at this very briefly together, but you can pause the video obviously and just take a little bit more time having a look at this. So there's a kind of distinctive lexicon. It's saying International Art English has a distinctive lexicon. So there's certain words that are used over and over again. So that could be radically, space, proposition, biopolitical, tension, traversal, autonomy. An artist's work inevitably interrogates, questions, encodes, transforms, subverts, imbricates, displaces, though often it doesn't do these things so much as it serves to, functions to, or seems to, or might seem to do these things. International Art English rebukes English for its lack of nouns. Visual becomes visuality. Global becomes globality. Potential becomes potentiality. Experience becomes experienceability. I've never seen that before. But you get the idea. It's a kind of certain kind of writing that we see in a lot of contemporary art, and I think I write like that as well. So I see this and it's a bit of a check for myself, but I suppose the reason why it's important to highlight this is don't make your artist statement full of contemporary art jargon that, yes, will kind of be understood by other people operating within contemporary art, but also doesn't actually have anything that anchors it down. It's just everything's kind of subverting, encoding, visuality, like it's not actually really saying much. And I think it's really important that your artist statement is unique to you and it functions as giving the reader some insight into why you're making the work and what is driving the work and what materials you're using, because people want to know about you as an artist. They don't want to know about kind of how many verbs you can fit into a description. Okay, so next, what's another obstacle? The third obstacle is that art statements are boring. Artist statements are boring. Usually the boredom factor is an exact proportion to the degree of imprecision. So what that means is that being smart and specific about the detail related to your practice is what makes the artist statement interesting and exciting to read. So be specific. Your statement should be uniquely applicable to your artwork alone. So now we have another task. So this is where you just take another 10 minutes or so to think about your work and your practice. So there is a suggestion that you can ground your reader in media or images that they can see, so that there might be an accompanying work or photograph to your artist statement. That might not work for you, but what I really want you to think about is what really gives you satisfaction in your work. So can you talk about the materials, the technology, the process of making, or even hunting for sources, the human relationships that your work might build? So if you start there and take about 10 minutes to just think about the materials, think about what gives you satisfaction, think about your process of making. Maybe it's the materials that are more important. Maybe it's the human relationships that you build. Maybe they are the materials. Okay. We're going to move on to our next obstacle, which is the fear of having nothing to say. And I don't even know if that is what I'm trying to say with that one. Perhaps it's more like a fear of writing something down, because if you do that, you kind of fix your practice in some way. And actually, how can you contain what something is in a few sentences when there's so much more to it, and it feels so much more complicated or overwhelming or exciting? Like maybe it's just frustrating to try to fix it down, because it's far more exciting than a paragraph that you can make. So the next thing we're going to look at is, okay, so if that is an obstacle, fixing the practice is an obstacle, let's look at kind of tracking our artistic decisions. So an artist statement could boil down to a series of pertinent decisions that have happened within your art practice life. So this next task, which again, take as long as you need. I'm saying 10 minutes, but it could be longer. You might just do up till this task and then think, I'm going to take a break now and come back to the rest of the video at a later stage. Do what works for you. So this next task is You're looking at which decisions, whether they were hard-won decisions, accidental decisions, but which decisions produce the most meaningful outcome for you in your journey as an artist. You know, what's been particularly meaningful. And for this, you can try writing out pages in longhand. You can kind of let ideas flood in terms of just writing handwritten text. Maybe writing handwritten text is easier. And then you can extract and develop the moments that feel promising within that text. Yeah, so that's the next task. We'll look at the next obstacle. So yeah, a lot of people think, well, why do I have to do all this writing when I am an artist, because I communicate better in images than words? And that is a very good point. A very good point. But I think for me, artist statement writing has always helped me get to another point in my practice. It's helped me sit back, evaluate what I've been doing, and figure out where I want to go. So yeah, you might be better at working with images than words, but there's something about, I think, that reflection through writing that can be really helpful. But also, we do live in a world where we have to apply to things, we have to talk to people about our work. We engage in socio-political issues. The work isn't, necessarily done hidden away in a dark room, and you don't necessarily want that to be the case. So if you want to kind of like be having conversations with people about your work, and you're interested in other people's work, then it helps if you've got the words to talk about what you do. And it also helps if you feel confident talking about what you do, because otherwise you just want to avoid those conversations and those discussions, which I did for years because I didn't feel comfortable talking about my practice. So I guess it's about trying to arm yourself with the tools to feel more confident having conversations with your peers about your work, engaging with contemporary debates within kind of art theory or global politics or whatever it is. But yeah, there's definitely helping with confidence, I think, as well. So with that in mind, let us think that if writing is a struggle, remember, usually you're writing for a curious, empathetic reader who's interested in your art and wants to know more. Okay, might not always be the case, but hopefully that's going to be the case for the most part. And to help us envisage this, imagine you're writing directly to the one person who understands your work best. Okay, so this kind of brings a sense of of warmth into what we're doing, and a sense of feeling that the other person isn't judging us, but that they actually are supportive of us. And then what does that do to the writing? So this is your next task. So this is writing for your comrade, is what I like to call it. So writing for your friend or your comrade. And it could be that you do this task with a friend, or that you just have a friend in mind. Also, if you prefer talking, if writing isn't your thing, you can try asking your friend, your art-loving friend, to record an interview with you, and then the transcript of which can provide the basis of a written statement. And now, oh yeah, this is this is a bit of a I think this is more of an unconventional approach, and it's one I really like, and one that I have used before when I've been a bit stuck writing artist statements. So there's the one of writing for a supportive friend. That's one of your tasks. You can do that via audio. You can record it. But yeah, if that doesn't work, the kind of slightly more unconventional approach could be that you try writing from the perspective of a piece of your artwork or an art object. And the reason why I'm suggesting doing that is that you become the object instead of the subject. So you kind of then take, I'm not saying that you kind of take the ego out of being the artist and you become simply part of the objects, and then you have a go at writing from that point of view. I'm not saying that as an artist everyone's kind of megalomaniac, but I think that when I'm talking about the ego, I'm just talking about the way in which we can kind of stifle ourselves. So yeah, it's just thinking about it in a really different way and just totally kind of opening that up by making a statement from the point of view of an object. It's a bit of a wild card, let's say, but one I really enjoy. So that is your tasks. Those are your tasks. So I'm just gonna take the mini pause. Okay, so we're coming to our conclusion now of kind of some points to remember and take home. So the smart and specific detail related to your practice is what makes an artist statement interesting and exciting to read. What were the moments that changed everything for you within your art practice, and what are you really excited about as you work? What is the thing that kind of brings you excitement within your practice? This one's quite similar to the moments that changed everything, but which decisions, whether hard-won, accidental, or bearing unanticipated results, produce the most meaningful outcome for you? And then imagine you're writing directly to the one person who understands your work best. And then identify a key theme, idea, or principle that holds your art together. So they're little prompts that we've kind of looked at throughout the workshop, which might, I think, are the things that might be most helpful going forward. And I think it's also just, I haven't got a slide for this, but it's also just coming back to the very basic things, which are, what is my practice? What do I want to do? And why am I doing it? Really simply coming back to those, the whats and the whys, because I think for a reader to know what's driving you is really great. I think also for them to know, so why you're making the work and what is the work, and then how you're doing that. So what materials, like coming back to the materials, I think again and again is really important. What materials are you using and why? Yeah. And I think as soon as you start talking about materials and existing work, it grounds the writing, it anchors the writing, it becomes an anchor point, which is what we talked about at the very start of the workshop. These kind of the ways in which an artist statement can kind of anchor. So yeah, I think those are the most important things to take away. Yeah, and I suppose the last thing that I wanted to just make sure that we all have in mind is to try to spend as much time making the art and less time worrying about writing about it. But I know that can be a very difficult thing to do. You can just spend far more time doing all the administrative work and the applications, but it's a good goal to have. So we have come to the end of this workshop now. I'm really sorry that I can't take any questions. And yeah, I really hope that this works as a resource for you and is helpful, and that you have some fun doing it as well. Okay, thanks very much.